if I don't have this job, I'll be jobless. I can't wrestle, I can't do anything. I'm in pain every single night.
Are you begging me, Kurt?
WWE have released a historic number of employees. Multiple superstars we thought would be WWE lifers like Heath, Slater, and Zack Ryder were let go to lessen the financial burden of the pandemic. However, not all released talent see their careers die. We see AEW has former WWE talent, but we could expect those released to make their way back to WWE. This is Wrestling Up, and today we are looking at 10 superstars WWE released and brought back. Drew McIntyre exploded on WWE's main roster in 2009 as the Chosen One. His gimmick was Vince McMahon handpicked him to be the future of the company, a sentiment which also resonated backstage. Despite a run as Intercontinental Champion, McIntyre's career did not take off. He was relegated to the comedy trio of 3MB with Heath, Slater, and Jinder Mahal before getting released in 2014. He had a 3-year run on the Indies, most notably in TNA, where he became a world champion and looked to have rediscovered his lost potential. He was re-signed by WWE in 2017 and made a big impact, becoming NXT champion. After a slow start on the main roster, being lumped with Dolph Ziggler, McIntyre slowly won over crowds and management with his work on the mic and inside the ring. It led to a Royal Rumble victory, and now he stands as the #1 star in the entire company. Jinder Mahal was never supposed to become the star he did. McIntyre was an example of talent WWE soured on, but Mahal was never meant to be big. After debuting and predictably being put with the Great Khali, Mahal was a rotational piece on WWE's roster. This led to his addition in 3MB and his eventual 2014 release alongside McIntyre. Mahal never looked like he would be anything bigger than the cult status that 3MB had gotten, but a few years away from the company changed everything. Mahal returned in 2016 and looked shredded. People refused to believe his new look was even natural. The look is the #1 tick you need in WWE. His promo work was impressive, and the company realized they can tap into his Indian heritage as a marketing tool, which led to a major push. Mahal would become WWE champion in 2017 and one of the most unlikely champions in history. It seemed Bobby Lashley would go down as one of the most overrated prospects. Like McIntyre, he debuted with manufactured hype and was pushed from the get-go. He was given preference over rising talents like CM Punk, becoming an ECW champion and later US champion. He was released in 2008 after being inactive due to injury for 6 months. Lashley would earn his chops in the indies and promotions like TNA, where he would become a highly touted world champion. He even stepped into the world of MMA, leaving the sport with a 15-2 record. He returned to WWE in 2018 and started with a big push, defeating Roman Reigns clean at a time where it wasn't possible. However, his momentum has since faded, even though he is a 2-time Intercontinental Champion, primarily due to misuse. People forget Daniel Bryan had been released from WWE before blowing up. After becoming the King of the Indies, Bryan was a heavily touted prospect heading into the inaugural season of the reality show NXT. His feud with his mentor The Miz could have been gold off the bat, but we had to wait to see it blossom. After an early elimination from the show, Bryan did debut on Raw with his Nexus cohorts, but was immediately fired for choking Justin Roberts with a tie. Bryan returned a few months later as the surprise member of Team WWE versus Team Nexus at SummerSlam, and he has had job security since. He did retire due to injuries later, but his contract was never voided and he eventually made his in-ring return. Before the 2010 firing, Bryan had been released in the early 2000s from a developmental deal. He claims that contract to be very important, as that is where he got to learn under William Regal, one of his biggest influences. It's funny, Big Show was considered to be one of the hardest superstars for WWE management to control. He signed a massive deal in 1999, which would see him stay with the company until 2009. Still, multiple issues hampered that run. While he did have a featured spot on the card, WWE were worried about Show's weight and had lobbied to have him sent back to developmental to shed some pounds. He barely spent time away from the company and was re-signed by February 2008 and instantly headed into a main event storyline against Floyd Mayweather Jr. at WrestleMania 24. before. He's had a respectable run since, serving as the true company man who will fit in whatever slot needed. He has been rewarded with a few world title reigns and main event feuds. Big Show now makes very infrequent WWE appearances, and when he does, it's to put over younger talent. The current women's roster gets credit for one thing, and that is how fresh and young it is. Even though we may be sick of the 4 horsewomen, they've been on the main roster for nearly 5 years. James is one of the few from the old era of women's wrestling still with the company, but even she had to get released before she came back. James was let go by WWE in 2010 after a 5-year run where she became one of the top women's wrestlers. The former champion was released because WWE wanted to change the direction of their division. Despite that, she was brought back in 2016 after a stint in TNA and Global Force Wrestling, but now seems to be leaving in-ring competition for the life of a producer. Shelton Benjamin returned to WWE despite his return almost being ruined due to an injury. Before we get into that, let's talk about how important Benjamin was in the early 2000s. He helped Brock Lesnar break into the business as a tag team in developmental. He had a featured role on SmackDown early in his career, forming the world's greatest tag team under the tutelage of Kurt Angle with Charlie Haas. Although after a small push on Raw in the mid-2000s, even becoming Intercontinental Champion, Benjamin would fall and eventually be released after a stint in WWE's ECW. Benjamin had a redeeming 7-year run on the indies in promotions like New Japan and Ring of Honor before returning to WWE in 2017. He was supposed to come back by 2016, but a torn rotator cuff meant he couldn't sign and had to endure a year with no work. He did make a return, but has had an unremarkable stint. Jeff Hardy has been released and brought back to WWE many times. He began in the early 90s as a jobber, but got his first proper contract with his brother in 1998. He was let go in 2003 after he refused to go to rehab, but was brought back in 2007. His run ended just 2 years later as he became a multi-time world champion and left WWE to deal with injuries. He was brought back a 3rd time in 2016, but we haven't seen much of him consistently due to injury and legal issues. Hardy's popularity, despite his years in the business and legal troubles, has not waned. In fact, his issues outside the ring make his story more compelling, as fans always root for Jeff to get better.
John Morrison.
John Morrison was one of those superstars whose relevance was controversial. Morrison refused to sign a multi-year extension in 2011 as he wanted to do movies and was frustrated with WWE creative. Fans would ask him to return, especially after his work on the indies garnered acclaim. He was one of the most recent signings the company made, returning in January and reforming his tag team with The Miz. Morrison had all the charisma and talent befitting of a superstar, but had a hard time succeeding within the stacked roster of the late 2000s. His release helped him become a star, as his work in TNA and Lucha Underground received high praise from critics and fans. Morrison being brought back is exciting, as WWE have already given him a title run alongside Miz and are teasing a major breakup between them.
Is it? Can it be? It is! The phenomenal one!
AJ Styles began his career in 1998, debuting on WCW as Mr. Olympia. He became a more regular occurrence on TV at the end of the promotion's life as a tag team competitor going by the name Air Styles. His partner was Air Paris and the team was called Air Raid, a nod to their high-flying style. Styles was offered a WWE developmental deal but refused to relocate to Ohio to join their program. Unlike the other stars on this list, just a few years away from the company did not raise his stock high enough for him to come back. AJ was low profile when he was released and built his reputation up for 15 years in promotions like NWA, ROH, NJPW, and most notably TNA. He was offered a return in the mid-2000s but turned it down, fearing he'd get lost in the WWE shuffle. He joined in 2016 and made it straight to the main roster, a rare feat in the era of NXT. He is one of the longest reigning WWE champions and a reliable top card talent, main eventing night 1 of WrestleMania opposite The Undertaker. And these were 10 superstars WWE released and brought back. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later in the next video.